All right. Welcome to lecture one, basic of pharmacology, and we're going to be using these lecture notes. So I also expect you to be having the same notes, and the material is generated under Crawford Institute of Health Sciences and Business Studies. Okay, so we start with introduction, you know, understanding the medical term for pharmacology. Pharmacology. So first of all, the pharmacology is coming from the concept of pharmacy, which includes the study of drugs and their effects, the management of pharmacy services like drugs or synthetics materials, and the treatment plans using medications, and also the calculation of doses and concentrations of those calculations and doses. And pharmacy also has its regulations or regulatory board that regulates the practices and the principles, the morals or principles and practices within the healthcare to ensure that drugs that are being produced are of good content and they are harmless to people who consume them. Now, the word pharma is concerned with research and development of drug discoveries, for example, like identification of new drugs and implementing, and then also scaling up of drug manufacturing or productions. All right, but for the concept of this lecture, we're going to talk about the pharmacology as the concepts of studying drugs and their side effects. All right, so what is pharmacology? What is pharmacology? Well, pharmacology, we define it as the science that deals with the study of drugs and their interactions with the living system. How drugs react with the body. When you take Panadol, how does that Panadol react with your body to solve the problems as why such a drug has been taken or administered. So a drug itself is a substance used in the diagnosis. Diagnosis is like coming up with the conclusions of the medical problems, prevention and treatment of disease. Now, the WHO expanded the definition of drug by stating that drug is any substance or products that is used or intended to be used to modify or explore physiological systems, or pathological states for the benefits of the recipient, whoever is receiving it. So a substance that is being used for a purpose of settling issues, concerns with disease or any conditions that are medical and might have been caused by pathological status or any agents, an aspect that causes disease, said that the person who is receiving it, that we're referring to as the recipient, benefit from it. How do we define, as we continue with some of the common terms? Take notes of pharmacology, take note of a drug, take note of what we are looking at next, medications. So we define these as drugs, drugs given for a therapeutic purpose. Therapeutic is coming from the word treatment, and the treatment is meant, one, to save life, two, to promote recovery, three, to prevent and promote health while preventing further complications. So as a result of that, it makes treatment be hided or being provided. And then we have therapeutics. It deals with the use of drugs in the prevention and treatment of disease, just as I've talked about. We have toxicology. Toxicology. So toxicology is the study of adverse effects of the drugs on the living system. Understanding the effects. If you take drugs overdose and a dose, non-recommended doses, how does it affect you, and how does it affect the system of your body? We have a chemotherapy. This is using the chemical agents or drugs to treat the like of cancer cells or other diseases caused by bacteria, fungi, viruses, or parasites. Parasites. All right, so we can use chemical agents, chemical substance or chemical substance drugs to deal with conditions like cancer cells. Then we can just burn them using the chemical reactions and with higher concentrations. So what is important of studying pharmacology? Number one, it helps you to understand drugs and how they affect living things. It also helps you to know the right doses of drugs required per persons based on their age. It also helps you to identify and respond to interactions, reactions, and side effects, and treat accordingly. Remember, there is a difference between interactions and reactions. Interactions and reactions. You see, for example, when you take a piece of tablet, and how will your body receive that drug and cooperate with such substance to be able to allow the drug to do its purpose? Or in most cases, you can see other people complaining that whenever I take these medications, I experience a lot of crashes on my body, rashes, etc. That is poor interactions between your body and the drug. And then the reactions, what comes out of that drugs, solving the problems or causing more problems, the side effects of those drugs. Also studying pharmacology help you to understand that and to know when to use drugs, because some conditions do not need drug therapy. Not every problems you get you're going to require administrations of drugs. Some people, they just get very minor issues, but a short while you find that they run to the pharmacy, they buy drugs, so they are always taking drugs. Could just be the fact that is having a normal situation that even the treatment cannot heal. Two, some of the conditions can actually be handled and managed by the immune system. In most cases you get problem, but you never notice. You may just experience headache, but that means the immune system has played its role by removing or destroying such viruses from the body, if only they are destroyable. But if they resist, the body sends the signals through symptoms and signs so that you can be able to boost your immunity in bestly dealing with such health issues. And also, to understand the process of drug intake, uh, drug intake is basically the state under which a certain drug has to be used, you know, uh, taken. For example, others, we have different forms of drugs. We have those syrups in liquid forms, and we have tablets, and also we have those in powder, and we also have others in dense, and then absorptions describes how the drugs dissolve in your body and get it to be in a form that the body can be able to take them to where they are required, and that of course what we now term as distributions. All right. Metabolisms and elimination. When those drugs, the residues has to be eliminated and has to be also controlled in your body so that further complications or side effects is not brought into your body by those drugs. And lastly, identify the properties of ideal drugs. The content of which the drug has been made with also helps you basically, because other drugs could be very risky to use in certain situations, and others can generally be proficient. Now, what about the pharmacology to patients' educations? How important it is to patients' education? Number one, promotes active participation of patients in drug therapy. Explaining, because when I talk about the pharmacology to patient educations is the learning or information given to a patient when drug has been prescribed for them or dispensed. For example, telling the patient that what, you're going to use 2 drugs in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, and then 2 in the evening. So this is educations about pharmacology, and it's very important because once I'm aware of how I'm supposed to take my drugs, that means I can definitely participate actively into the treatment that's been given to me. And also, it promotes therapeutic effect. The effective use of drugs when being taken as prescribed. It is also being promoted and then minimizes the adverse effects. Of course, the effect comes when you do not understand how you're supposed to take your drugs, and either you take overdose or you take underdose, and or maybe you take while skipping. You get the point. So it brings in a lot of effects, but that can be minimized by giving this knowledge to a patients during their educations on how they're supposed to use their drugs, and then minimizes the adverse interactions, effectively ensuring that drugs is how drugs cooperate with the body in order to deliver its efficiency and the benefits to your body is being any risk involved is being minimized. Now the question is that where do we get drugs from? What are the sources of drugs? Now we have 2 sources mainly, and we have other sources of drugs. We can get drugs from what we call natural source, and then synthetics. Synthetics means man-made or artificial. Anything synthetics is not natural. It is not happening naturally. it is man-made, So we have the natural sources. What are the natural sources of drugs? We have plants. We can get drug from plants. We have animals. We can get drug from animals. We have minerals. We can get drugs from minerals. We have microorganisms. We can get drugs from microorganisms, like the vaccines, and then other antibiotics. Human, um, we can also get drugs from human, from especially the blood, or maybe the hormones that has grown from the external part of the body. It can generally be used into drugs. you know um, then we have synthetic sources, of which we are saying most drugs are now synthesized. Synthesized mean that they are man-made. Is not like you go and eat a tree and then you get treatment, you get drug from there. Those days it used to be like that. You're gonna have to hit something, plants or whatever, in order to, as you're doing that, you're eating medicine, right? And we have those. There are very many. All those, most of the, as long as you walk into the pharmacy and then you buy those tablets, those are synthesized drugs. And it has synthesized sources, and the sources is they have been made by man. And I want you to understand that we have two main sources: natural sources and synthetics, or you can use the word artificial, right? Okay, so we can you talk about the National Drug Policy and Authority Act. All right. However, as brief as that, now talking about National Drug Policy and Authority Act, we have the concerns organs responsible for the roles of manufacturing of synthetics uh, drugs, you know and we know very well that without having those policy on the ground, a lot of fake drugs could be in the market and could be consumed by populations, and that affect the health of the populations. So we are saying that an act to establish a national drug policy and national drug authorities to ensure the availability at all times of essential, uh, efficacious and cost-effective drugs to the entire populations of Uganda as a means of providing satisfactory health care and safeguarding the appropriate use of drugs, ensuring that when you walk into the facility, you can be able to find drugs available. If they're available, I don't know, and they are healthy to be used and they can meet the demands of the recipient. Now, a National Drug Policy and Authority Act. Number one, we have the National Drug Authority. The one of the authority amended in the Act, and in ensuring the availability of drugs, and also the efficiency of drugs, right? So they use their own strategies, the strategies. And now we have the strategies of the Uganda National Drug Policy. What strategy? How do they handle their things to ensure that the drug has been regulated, they're available, they meet the demand of the clients, etc. So, number one, to ensure that it's essential, safe, efficacious, and cost-effective drugs are made available to the entire populations of Uganda to provide satisfactory health care. and also to make a continuous review of needs, knowledge, and resources of essential drugs. The essential drugs, I don't know whether we have talked about primary healthcare already. Essential drugs are those drugs that are preliminary, necessarily required to be available, like painkiller that treats common diseases. Those are essential drugs, because it is better for a clinic in a community not to have treatment for cancer, because this may happen once in a year, but to have all the available drugs that can treat these other common diseases. All right, and also to promote a rational use of drugs both in public and private sector, and improve the government regulations and control on manufacture, productions, importations, exportations, marketing, and use of drugs. All right, so of course we expect the government to play a key role in ensuring that the drugs are made available and are being regulated in the manufacturing process. The content included during the productions matters as well, and those that are being brought into the country and the one that has been taken away from the country meets the demands and the satisfactory rules of the market. And then uh, the national drug policy also is there to make sure that the provision of the systematic public informations and professional training and retraining of of health workers have been put in place. So people need to be systematically being trained and get the right informations regarding what they're supposed to do as far as the provisions of health care services are concerned, and also improve the registrations of drugs and licensing of pharmacy, to intensify research in all types of drugs, including traditional medicines. Yeah, so this explains that if you come up with a drug, you cannot just push it into the market without it being licensed and approved by National Drug Authority, because it's a policy that's set by the system. This explains the reason why many people have been arrested. When you claim that you have a drug that can help in certain problems and yet you don't have evidence, they're not scientifically proven and sound, analysis and being tested, and all passes through all stages required, you just run into problems. And also to comply with the international regulations on drugs, including the conventions on narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances under international control. Now, narcotic is basically those, could be either those drugs that are in most cases not they contain addictive substances, the nicotine, right? And then the psychotropic substances, this has basically, there's some of the drugs that are actually being allowed into countries and people use them, but they're regulated, even if they are not so good in many. It's just like alcohol. They have to be there because there are people who would want to use them. But if you're born again, you don't believe in drinking, then that is of course none of your business. So the same applies to drugs. And also fighting against drug and substance abuse. States where you might be given a drug that is expired, drug that are not profit, drug that cannot help you, that end up causing more problems to your health, they can be regulated. Now, we have the National Drug Authority, which is the part of the policy, and we're saying is a board of members of persons of high integrity that implement the National Drug Policy. What are the functions of National Drug Authority? Number one, to deal with and develop and regulate the pharmacies and drugs in the country. So every pharmacist, you want to open a pharmacy, you're gonna register with the National Drug Authority. You want to produce or begin to manufacture drugs. The Uganda National Drug Authority has to be in charge. You need to partner with them. They need to be aware of every single thing that you are producing. And also approve the national list of essential drugs and supervise the revisions of the list in a manner provided by the Ministry of Health. What do we mean by approving the list of essential drugs? There are some of the drugs that shouldn't be considered essential drugs because they don't play those roles. Like I've given you an example of what it means by essential drugs. Yeah, and making sure that these drugs have been supervised. In most cases, if you just supervise how things have been implemented, then along the line, people may begin to give good quality in the beginning because they are aware of your supervision. And when you stopped, that means the population can begin to consume unhealthy drugs, and they need to play those roles and do the revisions, revising them, drugs that need to be removed. You can see that most of the format of drug has changed, not really the same. Panadol has changed, HIV drug has changed, most of them has changed. All right, now, and new ones also keeps coming, that is the benefit of the revisions. And also has to estimate drugs needs to ensure that needs are met as economically as possible. What kind of drugs are highly demanded or consumed by the people in the country. If it is cotrimoxazole, then the productions or inventory purchasing has to increase in that case. Controlling importations and exportations and also sales of pharmaceuticals tools also need to be controlled. And promoting and controlling of local productions of essential drugs, those who produce essential drugs locally from home, like we have those they claim around their herbal medicine, has to be approved and controlled, and if possible motivate them. And also encourage research and development of the herbal medicines, promoting rational use of drugs through appropriate professional training. The good idea on how drugs should be used based on the knowledge that are given to people. Okay, so these are actually things that I believe you can read them and understand them without requiring much explanation. So we're going to continue from there, right from the national list of essential drugs and generally essential drugs. That's where we're going to start from. All right.